Symbols do not speak with words, but your soul understands them. Beneath language, beneath the clamor of thought, there is a current that moves without sound. In that current, a figure of light turns and turns, a spiral as ancient as stars, as intimate as breath. Some call it the serpent. Others know it as the living axis of the body, the secret fire, the ladder between earth and heaven. It rests coiled at the threshold of being, listening to a music the ears cannot hear, waiting for the moment when remembrance returns. This, then, is the beginning. Not noise, but silence. Not doctrine, but sign. For Thoth speaks most clearly where the world is quiet. The serpent is not the enemy of the garden. It is the cipher of the garden's law. In every temple of wisdom, a serpent appears. Ouroboros devouring its tail, Urius rising from the brow, twin serpents entwined around a staff with wings spread above. These are not ornaments for stone. They are equations, living diagrams of ascent. The spiral is the language of awakening. It writes itself in seashells and galaxies, in cyclones and in strands of DNA within the human temple. It writes itself along the central pillar of the body, coiling in silence until the heart becomes an altar and the crown a star. Thoth, keeper of measure and word, is guardian of this ascent, not as tyrant, not as idol, but as witness, the one who knows the geometry beneath appearances. He stands where breath becomes prayer and sound becomes form. He is the scribe who remembers what civilizations forget, the intelligence that weighs the heart to keep the path in balance. When his transmission comes, it does not thunder. It arrives like a precise wind across desert stones, tracing lines no sand can bury, leaving a message inside the marrow. Rise, but rise rightly. Consider the staff known to physicians and mystics alike. Two serpents climb in mirror arcs around a single rod, crowned by wings. This is the caduceus, the law of polarity reconciled, the dance of opposites braided into flight. The rod is the jed, the stable spine, the pillar of Ma'at. The serpents are currents of vital light, turning in perfect reciprocity. The wings are vision, the fruit of harmony. This is not metaphor alone. It is instruction. Within the body those currents move, lifting awareness from root to star. When they meet in the heart, the wings unfurl. In the hush of true listening, the serpent of light stirs, not by force, neither not by curiosity's grasp, but by reverence. The mind bows, the breath slows, the inner ear opens. Silence fills like water in a lamp. In that silence, a subtle radiance gathers at the base of the spine. Not heat as of firewood, but a clean, humming brightness, as though some forgotten instrument were being tuned. It is the sign of a covenant older than time. If the vessel is made pure, the light will rise. If the heart is kept light, the path will open. Ancient images call to this moment. The cobra on the brow of Pharaoh is not threat, but vigilance. Awakened perception ready to strike falsehood with a glance. Ouroboros teaches the cycle by which beginnings consume endings and endings seed beginnings. The serpent in the tree reveals the axis of worlds, the ladder set between the soil and the stars. To read these figures with the mind alone is to miss their voice. Their speech is vibration. Their meaning is remembered not in argument, but in the trembling of recognition along the subtle nerves of being. The transmission of Thoth does not travel through opinions. It moves by correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. The spiral in the heavens mirrors the spiral within the spine. The balance of the scales of Ma'at mirrors the balance of breath between the nostrils. The law of vibration plays itself as tone in the bones. The law of rhythm walks as steps across the days. Waking and sleeping, speaking and keeping silence, rising and returning, the law of gender, hidden in every seed and every thought, pairs receptivity with initiative until creation appears. The law of cause and effect writes with astonishing precision upon the parchment of a life. Sow, and you shall read. These are not abstractions to admire from a distance. They are ways of moving through the temple of the body so that the serpent may climb without harm. The serpent of light does not despise matter, it honors it. It enters matter to make it luminous, to teach clay to sing. The body is not an obstacle. It is a sanctuary awaiting consecration. Feet touch earth to ground the altar. Hands open to serve as channels. The tongue learns the weight of truth, for sound carves form. The eyes become witnesses rather than hunters. When the temple is tended, the serpent rises as naturally as dawn. To force it is to shatter the lamp. To neglect it is to sit in darkness with a wick unlit. But to prepare, to cleanse, to balance. Then the wick drinks oil, and the flame knows what to do. There is a music in silence. It cannot be heard by trying. It is heard by remembering. In that music, each center of the subtle body opens like a chamber of the pyramid. At the base, steadiness. At the sacral, the waters of creation. At the solar plexus, the golden wheel of will. In the heart, the emerald lamp of compassion. In the throat, the blue river of truth. In the brow, the indigo star of vision. At the crown, the unnameable radiance, white beyond white. The serpent is the conductor. The chambers are the orchestra. The hymn is the universe learning its own song in you. Not all memories belong to this lifetime. The serpent carries archives, not as scenes, but as capacities. A resonance with symbols not yet studied. A devotion to balance without having been taught its name. A longing for temples never visited. A familiarity with chants never learned. When such threads pull at awareness, the serpent is moving beneath the surface, adjusting the weave. The scribe within is sharpening the reed, preparing to write again on the tablet of the heart. The first line is always the same. Remember what you are. The desert is a teacher here. In the hush between dunes, thoughts thin until they reveal the scaffolding beneath them. Night falls like velvet. Stars crackle into view by the thousands. The Milky Way, a river of serpentine light, bends over the horizon and passes directly through the crown. It is difficult, under such a sky, to pretend that consciousness ends at skin. The serpent in the spine answers the serpent of the heavens. The spine is the obelisk, the skull its capstone. What rises within meets what descends from above, and a seal is made. Thoth waits at thresholds precisely like this, not to test with cruelty, but to keep proportion. He weighs not deeds alone, but motives, because motive is the geometry behind the gesture. If the light climbs for power, it falls into smoke. If it climbs for escape, it abandons the earth that needs blessing. If it climbs for love, love of truth, love of balance, love of the one in all, then it becomes a ladder for many feet. The mark of right ascent is generosity. The sign of false ascent is hunger that never ends. The serpent of light is patient. It can sleep a lifetime and wake in a breath. When it wakes, it asks nothing first of the mind. It asks the heart, "Are you light?" It asks the tongue, Will you speak true? It asks the hands. Will you serve? It asks the feet. Will you walk where balance leads? Answered rightly. It moves with a grace that seems inevitable in hindsight. The way rivers find the sea, the way seeds find the sun. The body warms, the breath deepens, the face turns toward a horizon not drawn on any map. Do not mistake quiet for weakness. The greatest transmissions arrive without thunder because they do not come to the ears. They come to the axis. They find the hinge in a life and turn it with a pressure just strong enough to let the door swing open. A friendship changes register and becomes a vow to truth. A habit falls away like a husk. A new fidelity to the subtle replaces the old allegiance to distraction. From the outside, little seems altered. Within, the serpent has taken one more ring of the ladder, and the view from the heart has widened. There is a vow every initiate makes, with or without words, to be a lamp and not a flare. The flare consumes itself in moments, throwing wild shadows and then going dark. The lamp understands time. It chooses a steady flame. The serpent of light prefers lamps. It rises to what is durable, to what will keep a hearth for others in winter. Thoth writes on hearts like these because the page is patient enough to keep the ink from bleeding. Symbols gather as companions. An ankh remembered at the throat when speech must bless. A feather remembered at the breast when judgment threatens to grow heavy. A winged sun remembered at the brow when vision is asked to fly beyond fear. The serpent coils not like a trap, but like a spring. Coiling is not hoarding. It is preparation. In the coiled silence, potential stores itself. In the moment of right action, it unfurls with precision and returns to stillness without regret. This is the rhythm of mastery, the pulse between readiness and release. The more deeply the serpent rises, the more keenly the senses perceive the real. Color saturates. Edges soften without blurring. Sound lands as though hollow bones were flutes. A kindness given to a stranger flowers in the chest for hours. An untruth spoken tastes like dust. The world begins to read itself aloud in correspondences. Leaves are glyphs. Clouds are commentaries. The body is scripture written in 7 inks. Nothing is mute. Everything is a bell. And yet, the work remains ordinary. Dishes still need washing. Doors still need opening for those whose hands are full. The transmission of Thoth exalts daily life because daily life is the perfect forge. Heat and pressure make virtue malleable. Attention hammers it into shape. Repetition gives it a shine. The Serpent of Light does not make an escape artist. It makes a craftsman of presence. The art is to keep the lamp lit in market and monastery alike, to let the same breath that names the stars also count the change so no one is cheated. When the serpent reaches the heart fully, a threshold gives way. Grief that seemed unending softens into a river of strength. Joy loses its fever and becomes warm and continuous. Forgiveness stops being a performance and becomes an atmosphere. The chest no longer feels armored. It feels like a doorway propped open in good weather. From here, ascent is not an ambition but a courtesy. A way of clearing the stair so others may climb without stumbling. The wings of the caduceus hum. The tongue, instructed by the heart, learns to choose words that build shelters instead of walls. At the brow, vision becomes law, not tyranny. Law in the hermetic sense, the recognition of pattern so accurate that compassion becomes practical. Seeing the spiral in another's life, the hand offers a rung instead of a lecture. Seeing the rhythm in a conflict, the foot steps aside in time with the drum. Seeing the polarity in a debate, the mind braids instead of splits. The serpent kisses the brow and leaves the imprint of an eye that opens from the inside out. At the crown, silence blossoms into radiance. No claim is made. No banner is raised. A clarity descends like cool rain on summer fields. The body does not vanish. It ripens. The face does not glare. It becomes transparent to something simple and immense. From that height, descent is natural. The light returns to the heart, to the hands, to the feet. It goes back into the world it always loved, and the world, recognizing itself in the visitor, relaxes. This is the first movement of the transmission. The serpent of light stirring in its ancient coil, answering the call of a temple tended, climbing the pillar of a life that has chosen balance. Much remains to be spoken in the language without words, but for now, the sign is sure. The lamp is lit, the staff is steady, the wings have shivered once in the still air. The scribe has dipped the reed. The page awaits. The silence returns, not as emptiness, but as promise. The serpent rests again, coiled in readiness, luminous in the hidden chamber. The heart keeps watch. The breath keeps measure. And in that sacred cadence, a civilization rises within a single human being, one quiet rung at a time. Not all memories belong to this lifetime. Some awaken like sparks in a dream, familiar yet nameless. Others return as a current of energy, rising through the spine without cause, stirring the heart until tears fall with no story attached. These are not accidents of imagination. They are fragments of the serpent's path, echoes of the times your soul has walked as initiate, priest, healer, scribe. Times when the serpent of light climbed freely through the human temple. Thoth, eternal scribe of divine measure, preserved these memories not in stone alone, but in the architecture of the body, in the very geometry of the spirit. When you feel the subtle stirring at the base of your being, you are feeling the serpent remembering itself. It has slept through seasons of forgetfulness, curled in silence as humanity turned its gaze outward, distracted by noise and surface. But silence is its homeland, and silence is where it wakes. Not through violence, not through command, but through reverent stillness. When the seeker becomes quiet enough, the serpent begins to breathe again. In the archives of Thoth, serpents appear everywhere. The twin cobras upon the brow of the pharaoh, the Ouroboros encircling the cosmos, the staff crowned by wings, with serpents entwined along its shaft. Each image is a map, a reminder of what coils within. To the unknowing eye, they are symbols of power. To the initiate, they are instructions. Balance the dual currents, raise them through the central pillar. Let them meet in the heart where wings unfold. The serpent does not rise in chaos. It rises in harmony. The Atlantean priests knew this, and so did the temple keepers of Egypt. They did not worship the serpent as animal. They honored it as principle, as the silent force of awakening, as the pattern of ascent written into the human vessel. They built chambers where resonance guided its rise. Halls tuned with harmonic tones, pillars carved to amplify vibration, initiation rites designed to align body, mind, and spirit. When the initiate lay in silence beneath the pyramid, it was not death they rehearsed, but rebirth. The moment the serpent of light would stir and climb, igniting vision, unlocking memory, opening the gates of eternity. This is why silence is the first initiation. Noise scatters the currents. Silence aligns them in silence. Then the breath lengthens, more than the heart steadies. The body remembers itself as temple. The serpent feels the stillness and knows the time is near. It begins to unwind, not with violence, but with grace. A warmth spreads. A hum fills the marrow. A subtle fire flickers to life. This is not imagination. This is the serpent remembering its covenant with you. Thoth watches this process as guardian and guide. His scales weigh the heart not only at death but in every moment of awakening. If the heart is heavy with deception, greed, or fear, the serpent cannot climb far. Its path is blocked by the density of distortion. But if the heart is light, if it has released what is false and open to what is true, the serpent moves freely, rising like dawn, turning the body into a pillar of light. This is the law of Ma'at in action. Balance within becomes ascent without. The path of the serpent is not a single leap. It is a spiral, unfolding through stages, each stage a chamber, each chamber a teaching. At the root, it teaches grounding, the embrace of matter, the sanctity of being embodied. At the sacral, it teaches creation, the dance of polarity, the river of life's flow. At the solar plexus, it teaches will, the shaping of energy through intention. At the heart, it teaches love, the great balance that unites all. At the throat, it teaches truth, the sacred power of sound. At the brow, it teaches vision, the eye that pierces illusion. At the crown, it teaches unity, the merging of self with the infinite. Each chamber must open before the serpent can climb further. Each is both gate and guardian. As the serpent rises, remembrance deepens. You recall not only this life but threads of many lives, woven like strands into a single tapestry. You remember standing in the halls of initiation, feeling the vibration of chants shaking the stone. You remember gazing into crystal flames, seeing futures unspool before your eyes. You remember lifting your voice with others in devotion to the One, knowing that every word was a bridge between realms. These are not fantasies. They are archives of your soul, stored in the coiled serpent, now awakening. And with remembrance comes responsibility. The serpent of light is not raised for spectacle, nor for power over others. It is raised for service. Every illumination it brings, every vision it grants, every power it awakens is meant to be anchored in compassion, in truth, in balance. To misuse it is to repeat the fall of Atlantis, when wisdom became pride and power turned upon itself. This is why Thoth guards the path. This is why silence is demanded. Only when the heart is steady can the serpent climb without destruction. The silence itself becomes a teacher. In silence, you notice the subtle currents of breath, one cooler, one warmer, weaving around each other like serpents around a staff. In silence, you notice the pulse in your chest, not only as beat, but as drum, keeping time with cosmic rhythm. In silence, you notice thoughts arise and fall, like ripples upon a deeper stillness that never moves. The serpent listens to this stillness, and in it finds permission to rise. As it moves, the world begins to change. Colors deepen. Symbols speak. Encounters carry hidden meaning. You see correspondences everywhere. The spiral in the clouds, the Ouroboros in the cycle of seasons, the caduceus in the branches of trees intertwining. Reality reveals itself as scripture, and you, awakened to its language, begin to read. The serpent is both the reader and the text, the key and the lock, the path and the traveler. Thoth's transmission moves through this process like a steady hand. You may not hear his voice in words, yet you feel his presence as precision, as guidance, as the weight of truth in each choice. He is the measure behind the movement, ensuring that the serpent rises in balance, that wisdom is tempered with love, that remembrance becomes service. His quill writes not only in the book of the dead, but in the living book of your being, inscribing each moment of awakening into the eternal record. And so, the Serpent of Light continues its ascent, coiled in silence yet radiant with promise. Each turn, each spiral, each chamber opens another layer of remembrance. The initiate becomes not only a seeker but a vessel, not only a student but a transmitter. For when the serpent rises fully, it does not remain for you alone. It radiates outward, stirring remembrance in others, igniting the hidden flame in those who cross your path. You become a living transmission of Thoth's law, a bearer of the silent fire, a lamp in the vast temple of humanity. The Serpent of Light teaches by movement, not by proclamation. Its language is the spiral, a turning inward, a turning upward, a return that is never repetition. To watch it is to learn that growth is not a straight line but a cycle, that ascent always coils back upon itself, that wisdom deepens by circling the same truths from higher vantage points. The spiral of the serpent is the spiral of galaxies, the spiral of hurricanes, the spiral etched into shells at the edge of the sea. It is also the spiral of your breath, the spiral of energy climbing the spine, the spiral of memory unfolding through lifetimes. The serpent reminds you, you are not separate from the cosmos, you are its living geometry. When the serpent climbs, you begin to see differently. The world does not appear random anymore. It reveals itself as woven, interconnected, alive with correspondence. The movement of the stars mirrors the movement of your inner energies. The rhythm of your days reflects the rhythm of the great cycles of the earth. Every encounter is initiation. Every symbol is instruction. Life becomes scripture, written not in ink but in vibration, not in paragraphs but in patterns. The serpent coils within you to make you a reader of this text. Thoth oversees this awakening with the precision of a cosmic architect. His scales do not measure punishment, but proportion. If you rise too quickly, he places weight to slow you down. If you cling to fear, he places a mirror to show you the distortion. If your heart grows heavy with judgment, he brings you the feather of Ma'at to remind you of balance. His guardianship ensures that the serpent's climb is not reckless but harmonious, not for conquest but for remembrance. For the serpent is not raised for spectacle. It is raised to restore the covenant between human and divine. At the heart, this covenant becomes clear. The serpent pauses here as though recognizing its true home. Light blossoms in the chest, not as burning, but as radiance. Compassion flows, forgiveness softens edges, joy ceases to be fleeting and becomes continuous. The heart is the temple where opposites reconcile, where the dual currents of the serpent intertwine into one. This is the place where wings unfurl, where the caduceus takes flight. Without the heart, ascent is hollow. With the heart, ascent becomes service. The silence deepens as the serpent coils through the heart. In this silence, you discover that love is not emotion alone, but geometry. It is the perfect proportion that balances self and other, giving and receiving, earth and heaven. To love in this sense is to align with the law of Ma'at. It is to let your heart grow light by releasing every deception, every distortion, every weight of falsehood. Only then can the serpent climb further, carrying you into the temples of vision and unity. As it rises to the brow, the serpent opens the inner eye. Here you see what ordinary sight cannot. Patterns of energy, webs of meaning, correspondences that knit all things together. Dreams become more vivid, synchronicities more frequent, intuition more precise. You begin to sense the archives that Thoth guards, not only in ancient temples, but in the ether of consciousness itself. You see that memory is not confined to personal experience, but is woven through the collective field. When the inner eye awakens, you glimpse the pyramid of infinite memory, shimmering in silence, waiting for your recognition. At the crown, silence flowers into radiance. The serpent merges into the thousand-petaled bloom, and the body becomes transparent to light. Here, unity is remembered. You are no longer a fragment, no longer a seeker, no longer bound by the illusion of separation. You are one with the current that moves through all things, the same current that coils as serpent, that shines as star, that breathes as wind. The crown does not end the serpent's journey. It fulfills it, merging coil and cosmos into one eternal flame. Yet descent is as sacred as ascent. The serpent does not remain in the crown alone. It returns, carrying the light of unity down into the heart, the solar plexus, the sacral, the root. It blesses matter with spirit, form with essence, body with soul. This is the rhythm of true awakening. Not escape, but embodiment. You do not climb the ladder to leave the world behind. You climb to bring the light back down, to make the earth itself a temple, to make daily life a ritual of remembrance. And so the serpent coils again in silence, resting but not asleep, luminous but unseen. It waits for each moment of reverence, each act of balance, each breath of truth. In those moments, it stirs, it rises, it reminds. Awakening is not a single event, but a continual unfolding, a spiral that never ends. The serpent teaches patience. It teaches that remembrance comes in waves, in cycles, in rhythms aligned with the deeper order. There is no need to force. The serpent knows when to rise. Thoth's transmission through the serpent is not only for you, but for all. When your serpent awakens, its light radiates into the field around you. Others feel it, perhaps without words. They sense a steadiness in your presence, a clarity in your eyes, a calm in your voice. The serpent in you stirs the serpent in them, reminding their souls of what they have forgotten. This is how transmission works, not by preaching, but by resonance. You become a living glyph, a hieroglyph of the awakened state. Others read you without knowing they are reading. The serpent of light is never owned. It is borrowed flame, entrusted to those who prepare themselves with balance and love. To think of it as possession is to fall into illusion. To honor it as gift is to remain aligned with truth. Thoth guards this distinction. He ensures that the serpent rises only in those whose hearts are ready to serve, whose minds are ready to perceive, whose lives are ready to embody. His guardianship is mercy, not limitation. It is the protection of the law, ensuring that awakening becomes illumination, not destruction. And so the silence continues. Deeper now, more luminous. Within it, the serpent coils, patient as eternity, radiant as dawn, waiting always for the next act of remembrance. Every breath can awaken it. Every symbol can stir it. Every act of love can invite it upward. This is the path of the initiate, the transmission of Thoth, to live as vessel, to walk as temple, to carry the serpent of light within, coiled in silence, yet ready to rise. The ascent of the serpent is a return to proportion. Where there has been excess, it subtracts. Where there has been lack, it completes. It does not rush. It studies the vessel, notes the hairline cracks pride has made, the soft places grief has hollowed, the corners where unspoken fears collect like dust. Then, with the patience of dawn, it begins to rise where the structure can bear its brightness. This is mercy disguised as slowness. Those who demand speed confuse heat with light. Thoth does not confuse them. His law is measure, and measure is kindness, for it ensures that the flame you carry will warm and not consume. As the serpent's coil loosens, a subtle honesty awakens. There is a new fidelity to what is, not as resignation, but as trust. The heart turns toward truth the way a plant turns toward sun, without debate. The tongue senses the exact weight of words, the way a careful merchant weighs gold, and refuses to mint currency that will not endure. The eyes learn to look through instead of at, past the surface ripples to the deeper current that explains them. The spine senses its vocation as pillar, remembering how to stand without strain. You are not taught these things by lecture. The serpent teaches them by rearranging how awareness rests inside the body. In this rearrangement, the body ceases to be a battlefield between impulse and prohibition. It becomes a sanctuary of agreements. Breath and pulse agree. Thought and feeling agree. Action and intention agree. Even desire, long treated as suspect, reveals its geometry. Not a wild river to be dammed, but a current to be channeled. The sacred does not ask for the death of energy. It asks for its consecration. The serpent ascends not by repression, but by refinement, drawing coarse force into fine devotion the way a loom draws loose fibers into a single strong strand. The path remains practical. The lamp must be kept filled. Sleep must honor the hours when the soul returns to its temple of night to receive instruction. Food must be chosen not only for taste but for tone, the quiet aftertaste it leaves in the heart. Companionship must be weighed by the feather. Does this exchange lighten the chest or burden it? Money must be moved with clarity, for currency is condensed intention. None of this is dour. Proportion gives joy room to breathe. An orderly altar invites a living flame. When the vessel is tended, the serpent climbs as a blessing met halfway. Shadow rises as light does. The serpent does not ignore it. It brings what is hidden to thresholds where it can be honored and released. Old armor loosens with a sound like dry leaves. Old vows that once protected but now confine crack like shells. The skin sheds. It is not violence to outgrow what once fit. It is obedience to life. Tears may come, not as collapse, but as irrigation, preparing soil for the seed of a new fidelity. Thoth places a scale beneath these passages, balancing courage with tenderness so the shedding does not become self-wound and the remembering does not become self-worship. Relationships become temples where the law is rehearsed. Listening replaces reaction. Presence replaces rehearsal. The serpent teaches that connection is a bridge built from two pillars, self-respect and regard for the other. Remove either, and the span fails. With both, the crossing can carry the weight of truth. You begin to speak in a tone that invites sincerity from those around you. You begin to hear what is beneath what is said, and answer that instead of the surface script. The caduceus unfurls between hearts as surely as within a single spine. Two currents rising in reciprocity, meeting in the mid-air of compassion where wings may open. Dreams sharpen into temples at night. There the transmission continues in symbols too condensed for daytime. A staircase that returns you to the same landing until you step with patience instead of hurry. A library where every book's title is your name. a river of green light carrying small boats, each boat a breath, each breath a vow. You wake with sentences that seem like riddles until midday proves them instructions. The serpent calibrates the subtle senses to recognize these nocturnal letters. Thoth, who writes without ink, inscribes with timing. A synchronicity delivered the day you would actually keep it. Ritual emerges without fuss. A bowl of water near the door becomes an occasion to remember clarity before crossing thresholds. A stone in the pocket becomes a weight that returns attention to the root when the mind tries to fly without wings. A single candle lit at dusk becomes the day's coda, gathering scattered notes into a chord of gratitude. These are not superstitions but agreements. Each act tells the serpent, "This house remains a temple. Consistency is the incense it loves." It rises in rooms where small faithfulness has perfumed the air. Work, too, is revised by the ascent. The craftsperson's bench becomes an altar of precision, the teacher's chalk, a wand of blessing, the healer's schedule, a litany of names to be held in steady light. Even the one who keeps account serves the balance of Ma'at, ensuring that unseen trust circulates. The serpent dislikes exhibition and adores integrity. It answers hidden excellence with a brightness others can feel but cannot trace. In this way, transmission travels into places where sermons cannot go. Boardrooms, kitchens, crowded trains, carried by the demeanor of one who has made their spine a staff and their voice a tuning fork. There is a temptation here, to make identity from the ascent. The serpent pauses when it senses this drift. If you begin to hold your awakening up like a badge, the coil tightens and waits. Not punishment. Remedy? Identity is heavy, and the heart must remain light. Thoth places a feather on the scale and asks a question that has saved many temples from collapse. Are you willing to be anonymous so that the work can be luminous? When the answer is yes, a door opens that pride could not even see. What comes through that door is influence without ownership, potency without drama, authority without noise. Energy refines into attention. Attention refines into blessing. Blessing refines into atmosphere. Enter a field held by someone who has practiced this long enough and breathing becomes easier. Arguments forget their lines. The room remembers itself as space instead of stage. This is not magic in the sense of override. It is resonance in the sense of invitation. The serpent rising in one spine invites many spines to remember their straightness. The world is full of subtle contracts. This one is among the most merciful. Presence does the heavy lifting that persuasion cannot. The earth answers the ascent. Walking becomes a prayer not because of words spoken, but because the feet notice they are touching a living body. Stones that never demanded attention begin to teach by their patience. Trees become scriptures of vertical fidelity. Roots not ashamed of depth, crown unashamed of reach. Even the wind revises its biography. It is no longer weather, it is breath on a continental scale. The serpent hears this and is pleased, for it loves nothing more than the marriage of heaven and earth enacted by a human being who refuses to choose between them. Errors still occur. The serpent does not offer immunity from being human. It offers a faster path to repair. When an untruth slips out, the mouth tastes the metallic flavor of imbalance and seeks correction. When impatience shoves where gentleness would have opened, the hands know the difference and apologize with actions, not only words. When fear tries to write the day's script, the reed goes dry in the scribe's hand until a truer ink is poured. This swiftness of return is a hallmark of maturation. The spiral narrows. Each circuit brings you home more quickly. Music becomes instruction. Certain tones unlock stubborn doors. Certain silences persuade the nervous system to lay down its arms. The old chants prove their longevity, not for romance, but because they tuned consciousness before the world learned to drown itself in noise. Even simple humming at the center of the chest smooths the breath's edges and reminds the serpent where the altar is. Sound is geometry you can hear. It sketches in air what the serpent draws in light. When aligned, they make architecture strong enough to host revelation without strain. There comes a moment when the serpent reaches the brow and writes a single sign behind the eyes. It is not an image, but a stance. Seeing that refuses to reduce. From this stance, cynicism looks like malnutrition, and sentimentality looks like a sweet that keeps you from eating. Vision becomes nourishment. It feeds on accuracy and delivers compassion as its result. The more truly something is seen, the more naturally it is held in mercy. This is why the uraeus on the brow is not a threat. It is vigilance in service of tenderness, striking only when deception endangers what is living. From the crown, the serpent descends again, not because it fell, but because it remembers that heaven without earth makes doctrine without bread. It brings the high clarity back into hands that cook and sign and soothe. It brings the starry stillness back into a voice that explains and invites and refuses to shame. It brings the spaciousness of unity back into a calendar full of names. This is the fruit of ascent, not escape, but embodiment. The city learns to borrow the sky's wideness. The chores learn to borrow the temple's pace. Thoth's transmission gathers all of this into a vow that needs no ceremony to be valid. Be a keeper of proportion. Keep the flame size to the lamp. Keep the truth size to the moment. Keep the power size to the heart that must carry it. This vow protects against the very errors that drowned luminous cities in ancient time. It keeps crystal from becoming weapon, symbol from becoming slogan, practice from becoming performance. Under this vow, the serpent remains a river of blessing and never becomes a flood. When fatigue comes, and it does, the remedy is simple. Return to silence as to a well. Not dramatic retreats into exile, but moments inside the day where breath is sipped like water. A minute with eyes closed before the door is opened. 3 slow inhales at a window before the message is sent. 1 hand over the heart before the reply is spoken. The serpent recognizes these tiny altars and answers them lavishly. It does not measure devotion by spectacle, but by sincerity repeated until it becomes nature. Gradually, the sense of being a solitary practitioner dissolves. A subtle network reveals itself. People you have never met, holding stations you will never see, each tending a lamp in their corner of the world. Sometimes a stranger's kindness clicks into place like a tile in a mosaic you did not know you were building together. Sometimes a headline confirms that quiet work has crossed a threshold. Sometimes the timing of 2 unrelated acts makes a current visible that was already carrying both. The serpent coils through this network like a river system seen from above. Thoth's law keeps the banks strong. The teaching returns to its first clause. Strength is silence rightly filled. In that silence, the serpent of light rests again, dignified as a coiled spring, not idle but stored with sacrament. There it waits for the next opportunity to climb. A moment of truth given, a forgiveness chosen, an act of service offered without calculation. Each becomes a rung. Each rung elevates not only one life, but the atmosphere shared by many. This is how a civilization rises inside a single human being and begins, quietly, to change the weather for miles around. The Serpent of Light has no haste, for it moves by law, not by impulse. Each coil is exact, each ascent proportionate to the vessel it inhabits. To walk with it is to learn the patience of eternity, the patience of stars that burn for eons without complaint, the patience of rivers carving valleys one drop at a time. The serpent does not demand spectacle. It prefers constancy. Its path is the spiral, never rushing to the summit, never ignoring the base. It knows that a crown without a root is only illusion. As it climbs, the serpent engraves memory into the subtle body. Every stage leaves its signature. In the root, it inscribes stability. The knowing that you belong upon this earth, that your body is temple and not exile. In the sacral, it inscribes creativity. The knowing that union births new worlds, that polarity is sacred, not shameful. In the solar plexus, it inscribes will. The knowing that intention shapes energy, that every thought is a seed with consequence. In the heart, it inscribes compassion. The knowing that to give and to receive are one. In the throat, it inscribes truth. The knowing that sound is creation, that words carry spells into form. In the brow, it inscribes vision. The knowing that reality is more than appearance, that pattern lies beneath all. And in the crown, it inscribes unity. The knowing that you have never been separate, that the one breathes in all. These inscriptions are not theories. They are shifts in being. They change how you walk, how you see, how you choose. The serpent is not philosophy. It is transformation. It alters the architecture of perception until the initiate no longer lives in exile from the sacred, but moves within it like air. To walk with the serpent awake is to walk in the temple without walls, where every act is prayer and every breath communion. The silence that accompanies its movement becomes luminous. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of fullness. A silence in which every sound is clearer, every gesture more precise, every presence more vivid. In this silence, you realize that the serpent is not only energy. It is intelligence. It is the living memory of ascent, the coded wisdom of the soul itself. It knows where to climb, how to turn, when to pause. You do not command it. You cooperate with it. You become partner to its wisdom. Thoth presides over this partnership as the eternal scribe. His transmission is subtle but unmistakable. You feel it as alignment, as measure, as the quiet insistence that balance be kept. He writes in the silence, not on tablets of stone, but on the very tissue of your awareness. Each moment of honesty becomes a letter. Each act of compassion becomes a phrase. Each surrender to truth becomes a sentence. In this way, your life becomes scripture, inscribed by the Serpent of Light and witnessed by Thoth, added to the eternal archives of remembrance. The serpent does not ascend only for the initiate's sake. Its rising blesses the field around you. Your presence becomes steady, luminous, resonant. Others feel safer in your company, though they may not know why. Conflict softens, fear dissolves, trust awakens. This is not your doing alone. It is the serpent's radiance, extending through you into the world, stirring the coiled light in others. The serpent teaches that awakening is never private. It is always communal, always for the whole. To rise alone is impossible. To rise together is inevitable. As its ascent stabilizes, you begin to sense the deeper archives. Memory floods not as stories, but as resonance. You feel the echo of temples aligned to the stars, the hum of chants carved into stone, the radiance of crystal engines pulsing with light. You feel the fall as well. The weight of misuse, the grief of imbalance, the silence after collapse. The serpent carries all of this, not as punishment, but as reminder. It whispers, do not repeat. Carry the wisdom forward. Align love with power. Balance vision with humility. These archives do not overwhelm you when the serpent rises rightly. They integrate slowly, weaving themselves into the tapestry of your daily life. A symbol catches your eye and stirs recognition. A dream delivers fragments of a rite once walked. A moment of silence unveils a vision of ages past. Each comes not to distract, but to guide. The serpent teaches discernment. Hold only what serves balance now. Leave the rest until you are ready. Memory is infinite. Integration is measured. The heart becomes the great mediator of these memories. It receives the serpent's fire and tempers it with compassion. Without the heart, vision becomes pride, power becomes control, knowledge becomes burden. With the heart, vision becomes service, power becomes stewardship, knowledge becomes blessing. The serpent pauses at the heart because it knows that only here can it be crowned without distortion. Only here can its radiance become gift instead of weapon. And so the initiate learns that the true throne is not on the brow or crown alone, but in the chest. The emerald flame of the heart is the seat of Ma'at, the place where scales remain balanced, where truth is weighed against the feather. If the heart is heavy, the serpent cannot remain aloft. If the heart is light, the serpent coils upward like music finding its octave. This is why compassion is not weakness but architecture. It is the geometry that holds the ascent. From this balance, daily life becomes luminous. Eating is no longer consumption, but communion. Speaking is no longer noise, but incantation. Walking is no longer movement, but pilgrimage. The serpent teaches that every act can be sacred if done in alignment. Ritual does not end at the altar. It extends into market, workshop, home. When the serpent is awake, life itself is initiation, continuous and complete. Thoth's transmission through the serpent is subtle but relentless. It reminds you again and again, balance, truth, proportion. When pride creeps in, silence returns until humility softens the heart. When fear clutches, the serpent coils quietly, waiting for courage to open the path. When doubt clouds, the scales reappear, weighing thought against truth until clarity emerges. The transmission never ceases. It is a continual correction, a continual invitation to align. And so, the serpent of light remains coiled in silence, luminous, patient, eternal. It rises not once, but endlessly, each ascent deeper than the last, each spiral a new octave of remembrance. You are not finished when it reaches the crown. You are not finished when visions flood your mind. You are not finished when silence becomes radiant. You are only ever beginning again, each day a new rung, each breath a new chance to embody the transmission of Thoth. The lamp is lit. The staff is steady. The serpent coils in readiness. The silence hums with promise. You walk as temple. You breathe as scribe. You live as transmission. This is the path of the Serpent of Light. Not spectacle, but constancy. Not escape, but embodiment. Not pride, but remembrance. The lamp has burned long enough that the walls no longer cast hard shadows. The air itself seems tempered, like metal that has passed through fire and cooled to a usefulness it never knew before. In this softened glow the serpent rests, luminous and unafraid, coiled in the sanctuary you have made of your life. Nothing is forced now. The ascent has become a native motion, as natural as sap rising in spring, as inevitable as tide returning to shore. The transmission that began in a whisper has saturated the rooms of your being. You do not hold it. You inhabit it. In this habitation, the measures of Thoth reveal their final kindness. They erase the division between sacred and ordinary without erasing reverence. What once required ceremony now requires sincerity. What once demanded rarefied conditions now asks for fidelity in simple things. The Ankh hangs invisibly at the throat every time a word is chosen for the good of another. The feather rests over the heart whenever judgment is tempted to grow heavy. The winged sun crowns the brow when vision is required to fly above a tangle without abandoning it. Symbols cease to be pictures and settle as habits. The Serpent of Light keeps vigil not only in stillness, but inside motion. It navigates the market as surely as the monastery, adjusting breath in the press of a crowded street, reminding hands how to be gentle when urgency tries to make them sharp. It writes small blessings across hours that once felt anonymous. An email that lands like balm because its tone is clean. A corridor conversation that diffuses trouble because attention was whole. A meal shared in a way that convinces loneliness it has misread the world. The ascent matures into atmosphere. You walk, and a field walks with you. Night remains a temple. When sleep lowers its veil, the archives open wider than words can hold. Yet even there, the ascent does not dramatize itself. Instead of visions that shout, images arrive whose quiet is unmistakable. A garden tended at dawn, dew clinging to leaves like stars remembering themselves as water. A simple bowl placed before a door, shimmering with green gold light, and a hand touching that light to the brow, to the heart, to the crown. No angels cry out, no trumpets sound. And yet you wake with a knowledge that does not need persuading. You have been anointed to be ordinary in an extraordinary way. The serpent descends with that anointing and begins its final labor. Not a spectacular ignition, but a deep integration. It braids the crown's wideness into the root's steadiness until sky and soil no longer argue inside you. It teaches the will to love structure more than control. It teaches the mind to love clarity more than cleverness. It teaches the heart to love truth more than approval. These preferences become the quiet hinges on which whole rooms turn. Doors that had swollen in the seasons of fear swing freely again. Sometimes you think nothing is happening. No fireworks, no revelations with a capital letter. Only a consistent return to balance that seems almost domestic. Thoth smiles in the quiet place where you will not see him and measures this as the greatest progress. The world does not require more spectacle. It requires coherence. It needs people in whom the scales of Ma'at no longer tilt with every wind. It needs spines that are jed pillars, steady enough to hang a day upon without the day bending out of shape. He has always trained scribes to write legislation into reality, not slogans. The serpent's script is policy for the soul. Grief, when it visits, finds a different house. It sits at your table but does not commandeer the meal. It speaks its necessary truths and is heard. It weeps and is held. Then, guided by the serpent's pulse, it remembers the door. Joy, when it floods, forgets its old habit of shouting over everyone. It becomes the steady burn in the hearth, the friendly heat that never scorches. Anger becomes a blade that knows the difference between surgery and harm. Desire becomes a river that irrigates without eroding the banks. All the passions take their seats in council, and the serpent chairs the meeting with the patience of mountains. The brow, long crowned by vigilance, softens into blessing. Seeing remains precise, but its edge is wrapped in mercy. People confess themselves without meaning to, as though your presence were a room where masks are confused and the face remembers how to breathe. You do not collect these confessions. You pour them like water back into the ground they came from, and something thirsty there drinks. The serpent is teaching you to be river and bank, motion and containment, the paradox that makes life possible. The voice becomes a bell that does not need to be loud to be heard. You find that silence, strategically placed, does more work than paragraphs. A single sentence, announced like a seed and then left alone, grows a forest because it was true and given time. You discover the hermetic law of cause and effect at its tenderest scale. A look, a pause, a choice not to sharpen a reply becomes a hinge on which outcomes turn by degrees that will be measured in futures. The serpent measures with you, weighting the scale toward what heals without violating freedom. Service ceases to be a category and becomes the geometry of your movement. You stop asking, "How do I help?" and begin living as help. Tasks arrange themselves by lightness of heart, not by noise. You do what keeps the temple clean, both the one with walls and the one that walks in shoes. When crises arise, they find you already breathing. Perhaps, from the outside, you seem unremarkable. Calm in meetings, kind to the clerk, careful with thresholds. You are not unremarkable. You are the quiet in which other people's wisdom hears itself. The serpent of light whispers a last instruction before it coils once more in readiness. Keep the vows you made when no one was watching. Keep them not as chains, but as rivers keep their beds. Under high water or low, through seasons of silt and bloom, a river honors its way by remembering it, the vows you made. To tell truth that builds rather than shames, to let power serve rather than dominate, to prefer proportion over drama. Become your riverbed. Thoth inscribes their lines with the tenderness of a craftsman who knows that a well-made thing will always be relevant. Anonymity becomes sweet. You feel the gravity that used to pull you toward being seen, and you bless it as a former teacher. The work has grown too luminous to be caged by your name. Influence moves like scent, like bread baking in a neighborhood. It lingers in the air and draws hunger to the table without a salesman. A city breathes easier because you have chosen to keep breathing when others hold their breath. A family feuds less fiercely because your tongue lifted a feather and weighed a sentence before releasing it. You will rarely get credit for these economies. Credit is not the currency here. The currency is atmosphere. The earth answers your fidelity with revelations you would have missed before. Cracks in the sidewalk collect small galaxies after rain. A weary cashier's eyes turn the color of the ocean for 2 seconds when you speak to her as though she were not a function. Seedlings pushing through a forgotten planter reveal a theology for which no seminary yet has words. And in the middle of a workday, standing in a copy room, or a field, or a doorway between 2 rooms, everything layers perfectly. The root, the wing, the flame, the law, the laugh you will allow yourself later. The serpent turns once in your center, not to rise, but to say, yes. Here, a season arrives that used to knock you from your axis. It does not now. You still feel wind, but you feel the pillar more. You still hear argument, but you hear the chant beneath it. the one the old stones borrowed from stars and taught to the bones of those who listen. Where fear once made contracts on your behalf, courage signs its own name in a hand steadier than yours used to be. The signature is familiar. It is the script you have seen on the inner tablets when dreams brought you to libraries with no shelves. It is the script Thoth taught your marrow to write. There comes a night when you wake without alarm and know that something has completed, not ended. Completed, in the way a circle closes only to reveal its center as a new path. You sit upright into a darkness that is not absence but depth. The breath stands in the doorway like a friend who will walk with you anywhere. The serpent brightens once, and the room brightens with it, not as light upon surfaces but as light within space itself. Nothing is announced. Everything is obvious. The vow you have been living quietly for months becomes the way your bones want to be arranged. The ascent is no longer an event you manage. It is the grammar of your day. When morning comes, you carry nothing ceremonially, yet everything is ceremony. You tie your shoes with attention that feels like prayer. You write a message that constitutes a blessing. You eat in a way that convinces the body it is a respected ally. You look at the sky and feel returned. The old anxiety that you might lose what you have gained does not rise. What could be lost? You have not gathered a possession. You have become a proportion. And so the Serpent of Light, coiled in silence, completes this round of its instruction. It will rise again and again across the years, whenever truth is chosen over display, whenever courage is wed to tenderness, whenever an ordinary hour is treated as altar. The transmission of Thoth requires no new temples because it has found one. Portable, durable, polishing itself by service. If you wonder how a world changes, watch for this. Not only upheavals, not only pronouncements, but 1,000 consistent lamps in 1,000 kitchens and doorways, studies and shops. 1,000 spines remembering their pillar. 1,000 hearts keeping light by refusing the heaviness of contempt. The serpent's ascent in one being lightens the weather for many. The law writes itself from the inside out. Civilizations rise this way, not from decrees alone, but from people who have become geometry. You do not bow to an idol. You bow to the order that makes love legible. Your prayer is the clean line of your day. Your hymn is the bright quality of your attention. Your offering is the way you carry strength so that others are not bruised by it. The serpent approves. The scribe records. The scales balance. The wings stir once in the still air and rest, not because they are tired, but because they trust the wind. At last, the final seal. Simple as breath, exact as number. Nothing dramatic accompanies it because drama would be a misunderstanding of what has been given. A sentence, shaped like a key, appears of its own accord inside the chamber of the heart. You hear it, and the room inside you rearranges to accommodate a horizon it had always suspected but can now inhabit. The lamp brightens a fraction. The world, which has been waiting, takes that brightness as permission, and in the renewed silence that follows, the transmission releases you to your life, which is the temple it came to consecrate. Walk, write, bless, keep the measures, protect the feather. Let the serpent choose its moments. Tend the small fidelities that make you trustworthy with larger ones. When you forget, remember gently. When you remember, proceed gently. The law does not rush, neither will you. Now the teaching closes itself with a single line, as clean as the edge of dawn over water, as precise as an inscription on emerald. This is not new knowledge. This is who you've always been.